Hey everyone, welcome to Be Our Guest, our weekly virtual happy hour with industry professionals. I'm Dev Janke, Artistic Director of Live and in Color. We are an artist-serving organization dedicated to developing new stage works that promote and celebrate diversity. Please consider making a donation to Live and in Color today to support our amazing artists who continue to make socially inclusive and bold new work during this time. Just go to liveandincolor.org for more information. So this is Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Live and in Color is dedicating the month of May to celebrate the AAPI community as it marks the anniversary of the first wave of Japanese American immigrants arriving in America. In each Be Our Guest episode this month, we will be honoring Asian artists who are transforming the industry. So grab a cocktail and start leaving your questions for our amazing guests in the comments. Please help me welcome 4 incredible artists who are working with organizations that are at the forefront of change. Please give a very warm welcome to School of Rock's Diane Phelan and Escape to Margaritaville's Albert Guerzon, both from the #Racism is a Virus campaign, and Rage Play's Nandita Shenoy, and Company's Angel Desai, both from the Asian American Performers Action Coalition. Hello, everyone. Welcome, my friends. Cheers.
Hello. Cheers.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's so wonderful to see you all. You all look so beautiful. How is everyone?
Still here.
Yep.
Go ahead. Oh, where are you all calling in from?
Manhattan, Upper West Side.
Yes. Nandita?
Manhattan, Upper East Side.
Diane?
Washington Heights.
And Albert?
Nyack, New York.
Oh,
I love it, you guys. Because sometimes I say Nyack and no one knows where that is. So I love that you guys are familiar with it.
I know where it is. Thank you for joining me. This is such a special episode for me and our company. So I'm really grateful to have you wonderful, talented, brilliant folk with me to chat. You've all made such an impact on our communities, both as artists and activists, and we'll be talking a lot about that. But I want to start with Diane. You founded the #Racism is a Virus and the #Unapologetically Asian campaigns. Can you tell us a little bit about how these organizations started? And
Yeah. Thank you. So, last March, over a year ago at this point, we started seeing the first waves of rise in Asian hate hit the news. And I'd been in a conversation with somebody, specifically Vivica Chow, who you may all know from the Asian performing arts community. And she was saying, oh, wow, isn't it horrible that this is happening? And I said, yeah. And instead of just in that flip moment, instead of saying like, oh yeah, that sucks, and then moving on, I just was like, we should do something. And I think it's talking to her because she's kind of an activist and outspoken person herself. And I just remembered seeing an image recently around that time of a bunch of Asian folks protesting at the Capitol building in Boston. And it really got to me because I was like, oh, that's not something I'm used to seeing. It really made an impact on me, seeing angry Asians out there talking about these things. And I was like, well, what if we're all in quarantine now, but what if we all got together and did something to say something back in unity? And it was really aimed at igniting the Asian American voice, to get people to say, hey, we can't abide by this bullying and this harassment and the violence. For me, it was about taking part in the conversation of what it means to be American. And part of it is setting your boundaries and saying, no, you can't do this to us.
Well, it definitely, immediately sparked something in all of us because it's been extraordinary, the wide-reaching nature of the campaign. Albert, was there a specific moment that made you decide to get involved with Racism is a Virus?
Well, Diane's laughing because, well, it's funny. So I've worked with Diane multiple times before, but when she started putting out her first couple posts of racism is a virus. So the first couple posts, I believe, where it was just a 8 by 10 or an 8.5 by 11 with the hashtag, and, you know, trying to get that to empower people's voices. And I was just like, hey, Diane, I'm on board. And I literally got on board because I was like, I have a friend who designs t-shirts. You need help. And then after a friend designed t-shirts, she's like, well, I guess you're part of the team. I was like, and I've been happy to help for over a year in. So that's how, but it really, after that sort of beautiful accident, it's really sort of been beautiful to witness not only my journey, but also the journey of so many friends in common, of how a year ago, so many people were kind of shy to jump on board or shy to wear a t-shirt that said hashtag racism is a virus. And then what a difference a year makes, where now we're getting media coverage. And now people who before were maybe shy to be a little vocal aren't. And I feel like, I'm not saying that's all because of us, but I think it's a beautiful thing to see how, like, it's sort of snowball affected, you know, not just racism as a virus, but all these other channels and organizations, and the unity and solidarity that came out of it. But for me, other than seeing those organizations, but seeing my personal friends, their transformation of being empowered and vocal. And I really think that had a lot to do with, like, one of the panelists said, each one reach one. Right. And I think it's like, for example, the 5 of us reaching to our little networks, and that snowball effect happening because of that.
Can you both talk to us a little bit more about what the campaign goals are, and, you know, what are some of the projects you guys worked on or are currently working on?
I guess I can take that. I see Al about to talk.
I didn't know if you were about to.
It's fun to be like, are you? You know, our original goal was just to get everyone talking about it, because people were. It was, you know, it was kind of sliding under the radar. People weren't acknowledging that this was happening to the Asian and Asian American community. So, you know, in my head, my goal was to have our president at the time say something, and his, like, pitiful remarks of, like, oh yeah, you have to be nice to that community. You know, we all know what that was about, and it's in the past now, thank God. But, you know, now it's just about continuing to highlight the nonprofits that are doing the work on the ground and raising money for them, and continuing to disseminate information and share information about what's going on. People in our community who follow us on the social media kind of look to us as one of the places that they get their news about what's happening in the Asian American community with regards to the rise in hate crimes. So we just try to, you know, and Al, shout out to Al, he's over here, he runs that account. You know, he's the one deciding what goes on that. And, you know, I help him sometimes too. And I try to jump in there when he's not available, but we're disseminating information. We're passing around resources. Some other specific petitions we had done previously, we had started something called the Grandma Project when the first, one of the first stories about the elder crimes, when the 90-year-old grandma in Bensonhurst got burned, we were passing around petitions. We were going to the marches. We were working alongside the campaign "They Can't Burn Us All" to try to get this crime raised to a hate crime. The best we got is that, okay, that the NYPD formed the hate crime unit as a response to all those marches that Wilhelm led. And you know, we were trying to make that happen. We were trying to spread awareness and get people to post pictures of their grandmothers to kind of appeal to the heart of what's happening to our community and how it was hitting us. But now it's been such an incredible flourishing of everyone's voices coming together. So we're just feeling like, okay, our initial goal had been to get what is actually happening, so that we're not the ones trying to do everything. There's incredible organizations that are having conversations, that are actually leading incredible initiatives, getting history books changed to include Asian American history, so that we aren't erased from American history, so people actually realize we belong here. But that, you know, it's been an incredible journey to get to this place where we're not feeling like, oh, we're screaming into the ether. Now we're all a community together, making a difference.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Thank you again for starting this. For anyone out there, make sure you check out all their social media platforms, and because the work they do is really incredible. And speaking of also incredible work, Nandita and Angel, you both work with the Obie Award-winning organization, the Asian American Performers Action Coalition, AAPAC, which works to expand the perception of Asian American performers on stage. Angel, can you start us off by talking about what the goals of the organization are and, what you guys do?
Sure, and yeah, you can say APAC actually.
APAC,
for sure. You don't have to say AAPAC. But yeah, thank you, Deb. Yes, we formed actually 10 years ago now. This will be our 10th year this summer. We formed as a group of performers. It started with a comment on Facebook, and one of us had seen a play, I think at Playwrights Horizons or something, and they had posted on Facebook, "Where are all the Asian actors on stage in New York?" And the comment thread, the conversation that resulted from that was like 430 comments long and big. And from that, it culled together. I think it was actually Ralph Pena who brought us all together in a room and just identified some people who were like, and I was one of them who's like, "Ralph, if you're organizing something, count me in." We formed, some people have stayed with it, some people have left. Nandita, you came on, I don't remember when you came on, it was 2 years, was it the next year?
5 years ago.
5 years ago, okay. But and our whole mission was to raise awareness and to increase the number of Asian performers on stage, but also to increase the perception of Asian Americans by expanding how the theater looks at us. So often we were playing foreigners, or we were playing these little token parts. And it was like, I don't understand why we're not just being seen as American. And in a representative art form, which theater and TV and film are representative art form, it's not just entertainment. They are reflective of the times that we're living in and the thoughts of the stories that we care about and the stories that are being paid attention to. You'll only go towards the thing that's being given the most energy. And so we were like, okay, let's bring a lot of energy and voice and stuff to this idea. So we started having forums and started talking to people, but we also decided to actually do the math. And to give into that cliche. I know, we gave into the cliche. Yeah. And we were like, let's look at the numbers. Let's actually count the number of Asian performers in the 16 major off-Broadway houses and all the Broadway stages to see exactly how many there are per season. Our first look back was 5 years. It was 2011 down to 2006. And the percentages were what we suspected. They reflected our feelings. We were about 3% of who was on stage off Broadway and less than that on Broadway. And the numbers have sort of, we got a lot of press. People know us now. Now we have this Obie, which is wonderful. Yay. We've done a lot of stuff since then, and we're still doing the statistics report. But the numbers only crept up to about 6% now. And it's like, it's better. People love to say, isn't it better now? Isn't it better? And I'm like, it's better in the sense that we're out of the ICU. Mm-hmm. We're no longer in triage, but we're still in the hospital. Mm-hmm. So better is relative. The whole goal is to get the fuck out of the hospital, and we're still in it. So anyway.
Yeah. The work, I think that statistics report was very profound for a lot of people because it really put it in front of, everyone in black and white, and there was no arguing with it. The question that was posed, where are all the Asian actors? Nandita, how have the answers to that question changed over the past decade, if at all?
I don't know. I think it's interesting to think of there's always we just couldn't find any. That's the thing that just I want to tear all my hair out when someone's like, well, we tried to cast that King and I with Asian people, but we just couldn't find any. And I'm just like, So there are Asian actors. There are lots of Asian actors. There are lots of Asian actors who come from all different places, many of whom were born in this country. And it's just mind blowing to me to have that, like, where are they, or why can't we find them? I'm like, I don't know why you can't find them. Like, open your eyes, look. It's not hard. Every program, MFA program, has Asian people in it. Like, I mean, there's just it just befuddles me, to say the least.
And if I could add to that, the other thing too is if you are in a state, a town, or a city where there aren't a lot of Asian people that you can get easily because you're way out somewhere in the Midwest, don't do The King and I.
Yeah.
Pick something else.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that musical. Please don't do that musical.
Yeah.
So the thing that I would like to insert into things is, would you do it with Black people? Because if you don't do it with Black people and Black stories, if you're not going to do The Color Purple with a half white cast, don't do any Asian stories with Asian characters played by white people or non-Asian people. Please don't do that.
Going back to the question that keeps asking, where are we? What do you think?
Here.
We're here, exactly. But what are the questions we should be asking, do you think, in terms of trying to get us on stage, or trying to, where I always say, like, where should we be looking? Because obviously, we know that we exist. I think just as a community, like, what are the things that people can do?
I mean, I think people, like, first of all, I've also feel like and I'm sure all of you, I know all of you have also, like, served as, like, de facto casting director at some point when somebody's like, I need this person, that kind of, Filipino or whatever. And you're like, and I'm always like, oh, I want to help my friend and get somebody a job. So, like, we're doing this extra labor, but, like, then after you ask me like 5, 6, 7 times, are you not keeping a list? Like,
right.
Be organized.
Right. Also, there are theaters, there's a question right now in the comments, do you have any recommendations for AAPI creators we should be following? And it's like Mayi, Natco, Leviathan. There was Pan Asian. They've been creating theater for years.
Decades.
For decades. So a really easy way to figure out who's who is to go to those websites and see the writers that they have been championing, see the writers that they are nurturing, see the writers that have been produced there. And it's like, I think, yeah, it's if we're talking about institutions that are primarily white, which is most of them, it's like, I think it has to go really down to the roots, Deb, to your question about what can we do. I think if you're not Asian, it's about understanding and being willing to see us as fellow Americans. I think you have to start there, is understanding that we are fully rounded, 3-dimensional people. And if we grew up in this country, guess what? We're American. And some people who've moved here and became citizens, they're American. And if they've lived here a long time, we can play those parts. You have to be willing to, expand your mind. You have to start there, and then you have to start championing the writers who are writing those stories and allow us to tell those stories.
And I also think going into those communities, like, if you are looking, then, go to a Mayi show, go to a Natco show, there's no shortage. I feel like sometimes there's this sense of like, we should all be going to them, which, I mean, I do think that as Asian actors, or, actors who are not white, we are going, we are showing up, we are doing the work. But I also think that there's something about engaging the community that you're interested in or trying to learn more about, or, just go check something out.
Yeah, so great. I just want to go back to the stats report again for a second. How often do you plan to do that? I'm just curious, because I feel like it is one of the most effective tools for our community to really see progress or no progress. is there plans for another report to come out or what? I mean, it's kind of hard this year because there's been nothing, but.
But we have another one that's coming out for the 18-19 season that'll be out in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, right. we're a little behind. We're almost caught up, although we were behind anyway, even before the pandemic. Like even before the pandemic hit, we're like, I think we're behind a season. So, because AAPAC is made up entirely of volunteers who are performers who fortunately a lot of whom are working, or if not constantly, it's just like somebody's working. Okay, now this person's working. Okay, now that, two of them have kids and other responsibilities. So it's like, it just sometimes takes a minute but we have two brand new members.
Two new members of our steering committee, Lapika Shah and Vichet Chum.
Have just joined. So.
Yep.
So all four of you have been part of the New York theater community as actors and creators and have, as I said, your resumes are extraordinary and I'm a fan of all your work. How has engaging with activism developed your work as an artist? Anyone jump in?
I've been saying a lot. Oh,
go ahead.
Go Diane.
We love StreamYard. We love online things. I've been saying that the same energy center that it takes to create something is the same energy center for me as it is to do activism. So it feels kind of, the activism that we've been doing feels to me similar as it is to performing, except it's just almost a little more gratifying because you're actually just saying the thing that you want to say versus, unless you're a writer like Nandita and, doing the roles like you want to do, you're kind of, so that's what I'll say about that. It's just, it's been hitting the spot for me during this time.
Anyone else?
I mean, I think there is a performative nature about the activism as well. But I mean, I will say, like, when I moved to New York, I didn't move here to become an activist, but I felt like in a lot of ways I had to be because I needed to advocate for myself and for my peers. And I think in terms of my art, I think that probably is most visible as a writer in terms of like those numbers. Like my plays always have more people of color and more women than men or white people, because if you look at the numbers from our reports, those are the people who are not on stage. So, if I can change that number in some way, then that's what I'm going to do. So I would say that's how my activism is connected to my art.
Angel, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was going to sort of almost answer more in terms of process a little bit, just because, and I'm not sure if it's if it's chicken or egg. I'm not sure which came first, but I think at the point that we formed AAPAC, we'd gotten to the point where we were more angry than we were scared, because there was a there's always this little trepidation. If we speak up, if we push back against the people that we want to hire us, are they going to hire us? And there came a point where we were like, well, they're not hiring us anyway, number one, but number two, it's like, but there's strength in numbers. If we go to them as a group, especially with that report, and we just bring it to them, maybe, just maybe, it will start a dialogue. And it doesn't have to be about attacks and defenses, but actually a dialogue. But I will say, going back to that anger and fear thing, I don't know which came first, but I feel like it might have coincided with or helped with just less of a sense of fear, just more like within the acting work itself, I'm just more fed up with bullshit. And I think that that's always useful as you're growing as an actor, as an artist, like to approach your work. You're just like, with less and less fear. So I think that might actually have had a direct effect on the work itself, just to be more fearless,
Yeah. Albert, you want to jump in?
Well, I was going to say, marrying the activism with my performance career, I've realized that there's so many people that share our feelings, whereas before this was on the forefront and these conversations were not being had. I know model minority is a whole different topic, but I feel like there were a lot of people that were just being quiet because they were at the mercy of these casting directors, and they didn't want these people not to hire them because they're too loud or they're too vocal. And so I think, by me posting something and getting and reading comments of people agreeing with me, or looking at someone like Diane's thread, who's like, this woman speaks her mind, and she'll put something out there and it'll be this beautiful argument that needed to be had for this long thread. And you just read it and you're like, oh my gosh, this person was so quiet. I did a show with this person, but like, now I know we're on the same page, actually. And I think what this pandemic has done, and now all of these activists have come out of the woodworks, I think it's beautiful to see agents, casting directors, whether that's performative or not, they're putting it on their social media, saying that, like, we stand with BLM, we stand against Asian hate crimes, we stand, and it makes me, or we stand with blind casting. Again, I don't know if that's performative or not, but would we have seen this if our community was not as vocal this year? Or, thank you, Angel and Nandita, for all of your work. The work that you all started 10 years ago, probably not,
Yeah.
I just want to throw in there, I'm sorry, I've just been such a huge fan of AAPAC. When I came to I reference you guys all the time in many things I talk about. They're like, what about the numbers? I'm like, go look at AAPAC. They have compiled the actual numbers. They are abysmal. So like, don't even just take my word for it. Go read everything that they're doing. You guys are such role models for me. I just needed to fangirl for a second. Okay, carry on.
So true.
Diane. Well, I just want to say to, speak to Albert's and Diane's point is that what I'm proud of with the report is that with data, I think like, racism and discrimination, it is a form of abuse. And the way abusers keep abusing us is by making us all feel like we're the only ones, or we're isolated and we're not, it's because we did something wrong. We didn't do anything wrong. And what was profound about that Facebook post 10 years ago was like, after so many years of being like, I just don't get auditions and it's because I'm bad, was like everybody else being like, I'm not getting an audition for this place. I didn't do this, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, this is not only happening to me. And I mean, look, we're all actors. We all have space to be like, maybe I'm bad. But I think that the numbers tell a very compelling story and they are indisputable. So it's no longer like, I have a feeling that Asian people are not on stage. We like have the numbers that Asian people are not on stage. And I think it's so powerful. And to Angel's point, I think that has changed just my approach, because it's no longer this like, I just feel like something isn't right.
Yeah.
Can we call out the idea that this is what Asians and Asian Americans have been going through in America? It's about this gaslighting. It's been happening on Broadway, seriously, and in the theater community. And you guys have blasted that open. And now, I think it's just happening in the rest of the world that we are finally able to say, hey, no, this wasn't just a feeling we were having. This is all really happening. And it's all because everyone is being brave enough to say something. So I was just very struck by what you were saying, and sorry to interrupt. I just think it's an important thing to insert into this conversation and say out loud for our community, and to hear it over and over again that we have been gaslit, and it's good for us to talk about these things because it's not just in your mind.
Well, going beyond, our theater bubble, the pandemic has shed a light on so many different problems, but sadly, one of the worst has been the horrifying xenophobia towards the AAPI community throughout the world. How have each of you handled this, both personally and professionally, through activism and artistic endeavors? I mean, I know it's such a visceral thing for all of us, so I'm just curious of just in, we have our issues within our little community, but in terms of the broader world, how has that affected you or changed the way you work?
For me personally, I grew up in Nyack, New York, and so and I was bullied growing up. People would stretch their eyes and do that. But now that that's happening to elders, and not too long ago, my wife was spit on in the West Village. I have, I go to a church with a lot of elderly Filipinos, and now I'm scared for them. So it has affected me personally. I feel like also being in the burbs, a lot of people in New York are like, oh, I'm scared to ride in the subway. And I feel like I wouldn't see it. I wouldn't witness it as you guys would. But then I also, and forgive me if I have some clients that are on this call, I also work in Scarsdale, New York. I teach fitness. And there's some people, you talk about our bubble, Dev. There are people in their bubble who do not see or hear, or they put the blinders and the headphones on, and they don't. For example, I'll wear a shirt that says Asian votes count or racism is a virus, and they'll look at it and just go, and that's all they'll say. And I'm like, I see you. And in my mind, I'm going, I see your true colors. Literally, sometimes I hum that under my breath. But I feel like you talk about our bubble. There's people who are in their bubble and they do not get it. And I'll put up these posts and they're like, really? That's happening? And I'm like, where are you? You're just 45 minutes north of the city. Like, this is happening. So it's affected me in two ways. One, because it's affected my family personally, but two, it's kind of affected my business because I'm like, okay, Albert, keep your mouth shut, or how can I have these intelligent conversations without, turning a fitness session into a political debate? So it's weird because I feel like Manhattan, you guys witness it more, and in the burbs, some people choose to pretend it's not happening.
Anyone else have any thoughts?
I'll be honest. Oh, go ahead, Angel.
No, go ahead, Diane. I'm still formulating because I want to respond to Albert, but I'm still thinking. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am not going to respond to Albert right now, even though I'm just like, what? We've talked about it personally. Just dropping in other thoughts was that I'll be really honest and say, I feel relief that we are all talking about this now. I realized I've grown up a very angry girl. I've been a very angry girl all my life, and people are like, why is she so angry? And now I know it's because of the patriarchy and because of racism. And it's something you said earlier, Nandita, that, it's this kind of feeling like, oh, why is this kind of happening? That like weird little gaslighty feeling. And now I realize like, oh, it wasn't just me, it wasn't, sure, I'll take responsibility for whatever it is I need to take responsibility for. But I'm like, oh, I realize I'm in a system that is, not kind to women and people of color. And I can just let it not be something personal. So like that personal part of my chip off it's like, I'm like, oh, we're all in this together now. So I've actually, it sounds weird to say this, but there's a part of me that's grown a bit because I had taken so much of this personally. I was like, why are people disrespecting me? Like if someone body checked me on the street, someone body checks me on the subway, it's just that feeling of like, why am I being treated like a secondhand citizen all the time? And then you're like, oh, it's because you're a racist. Oh, and you don't even know it. Okay, now, not to be glib about it, but I realize it's bigger than just me. And it's a thing that we can name and then try to do something about. So it's felt a little bit of a relief in that weird way. There's a silver lining.
Yeah, I was just to go back to Albert's thing because I grew up in upstate New York, as did Nandita. Actually, we both. I'm from Binghamton and she's from Buffalo, and so so that thing about being like in this bubble and minority, but being the person of color looking at it through that. I know this is going a bit far from your question, Dev, but it's, I think that question that you're asking yourself, Albert, about like, when is the time, should I even talk about it? Do I even talk about it? Because I think the bubbles in those places are very easy. I think that's why they're conservative, or they tend to be conservative. Binghamton voted for Trump, even in this last election. I imagine Buffalo did too. I don't know, Nuns, but oh, they didn't? Oh, okay. But a lot of upstate New York is red, you know, because there's actual physical isolation, smaller populations, primarily white, you know, different economies. So I think that leads people to their bubbles. And then they want to think that they're not racist. So there's this like weird recipe that happens. They're in the bubble. Then they don't want to imagine that they're racist. So they're like, I have an Asian trainer. I'm not racist at all. And then you wear the shirt and suddenly this thing happens, and your choice so far has been to not say anything. And it's true. It's like, what are you going to do? They're paying you to train them. And then, and I am no good at this because I get really hot-headed. So I'm not very good at being in a moment with someone and having a little thing and just giving them just enough to think about without getting into this big argument. But it could be that the t-shirt or the comments are the beginning of a new way to think for them. I support you, whatever you do, whether you feel like you have to just play it cool or whether you decide you're going to say like, yeah, you know, racism. Right. I mean, sometimes you kind of just have to say, yeah, racism, you know, we feel it too. And that might be it. I don't know. I'm probably not the best one to, you know, just say what it should be.
No, it's funny because I actually called Diane after and I'm like, oh my gosh, this client. But also, well, thank you. And I think you're exactly right. I think it's because in certain communities, you know, people vote a certain way because they want to hold on to money. And I just want to say, I'm in Nyack and you guys grew up super north. People are like, oh, you're upstate, Al. It's cold where you are. I'm like, fool, I got the same weather you get. So you're more north than I am.
I mean, you know, the as I call them, the racism stories, the macro and microaggressions. I think, you know, all of us could go on and on and on and on and on about the things that have happened to us and the things we've experienced. You know, what I love about the work all of you are doing is trying to shift the needle, trying to like move us forward. You know, we at Live and in Color put together a little performance that we feel highlights the importance of learning to respect and care for one another. And here is Carefully Taught and Children Will Listen, arranged by the amazing Yan Lee and performed by Wicked's Shoba Narayan and Hamilton's Marc delaCruz. Please enjoy.
Careful the things you say, children will listen. Careful the things you do, children will see. You've got to be taught. You've got to be taught. Children will learn. Children may not obey, but children will listen. Children will look to you for which way to turn. You've got to be taught to learn what to be. You've got to be carefully taught. Careful before you say, listen to me. You've got to be taught to hate and fear. You've got to be taught from year to year. Children will listen. Got to be drummed in your dear little ear. So careful the path you take. You've got to be taught to be afraid of people whose eyes are careful the things you say. Or people whose skin is a different shade. Children will listen. What say it will all be alright when you know it might not be true. What do you do? Careful the spell you cast, to be taught, not just on children, before it's too late. Sometimes the spell may last past what you can see, or 7 or 8, and turn against you. To hate all the people your relatives hate, you've got to be carefully taught. Careful the tale you tell, that is the spell. Children will listen. Children will listen.
Yay! Thank you so much, Shoba, Marc, and Yan. It's just, they're brilliant. After all the events of the past year, do you all feel hopeful that we're returning to an industry change for the better?
I am. I do. And with that question, I also want to piggyback that, Dev, with something Nandita was talking about earlier, about like going into, questioning, am I good enough, as an actor? I feel like what rang to me then, and I tried to find a pocket, I didn't want to interrupt you earlier, was like, as Asians, I feel like there's that Steve Martin quote, be so good they can't ignore you. Right. And I feel like it's always one, Asian or not, I feel like that's good for me to practice. Like, I have to be so good they can't ignore me. But as an Asian, I feel like you have to, because you have that extra casting struggle. But now, Dev, I do think, yes, we're coming out of a pandemic and there's protocols and there's that safety issue. But I do think because we're having these type of conversations and they've been happening for a whole year, that progress is happening. There's so many waves of progress that are happening. I know with Karen Olivo making her statement and now casting directors saying that they're inclusive. I am hopeful. I
would say I'm hopeful only because I don't think any of us really now are going to be quiet. I think anytime there's a BIPOC performer in a room, people are going to say something. So that's what I have hope in. I think that we're all changed for the better, to quote Wicked. I think that we're all changed. The change has been in us, so that it's gonna ripple out from there.
I see. This is what I want to go back to first to say thank you, Diane, about that lovely thing you said about AAPAC and all of that. And this is why I love you and the young people, because there's so much energy and there's so much optimism and hope. And I'm like, oh, that's so great. I'm glad you have that. I don't want to take
Angel, you're young. You're young. We're all young.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Nans and I are like, okay, because I don't want to take. I think the optimism is more important than anything I'm about to say. But I'm going to answer your question because Deb, I think that there is a thing that theater needs to think about. It's less to do with race, although I do actually think it's tied into white supremacy and capitalism, and all of those things are tied in. Diane and I were actually having a conversation about some of this over email in a different context recently, which is that I think if theater is going to walk the talk, because they've been talking a lot of theaters have made statements, a lot of theaters have said this thing. I think the proof will be in the pudding. I think we'll see if they actually understand what it will mean, because simply adding more writers and directors of color and actors of color isn't enough for theater to make the kinds of changes it needs to make. They need to make fundamental changes. That goes down to where and how they were founded and how they are funded. We may not be able to change some of how they're founded, but we can change how they are funded and how the funding trickles down to artists, because more often than not, it is the BIPOC artists who suffer the most. And it is the actors and the performers who suffer the most of those BIPOC artists in financially. I think all those things are interlinked. If they don't think that they can make a profit off of us, then they're not gonna hire us. They're not going to see the value in it. And I think that I sort of feel like the lesson of Hamilton has to be much larger than, oh, we can look at what we can do with hip hop. No, it isn't Lin-Manuel's. That show cannot be just an outlier. That show has to be the beginning of a movement of where theater goes. Because if they don't understand that there is a huge swath of people, BIPOC audience members out there to get to, if you want it to go towards that kind of, not even a fraction of that kind of success, you need to actually rethink how you do everything.
Yeah.
So that is I'm just putting that out there.
Nandita, do you want to add anything?
I mean, I think I'm somewhere between Diane and Angel in terms of, I have hope, and I think that there are some theaters that are making really fundamental changes. I think that it has been a time of reckoning, and some people are really taking a look at how they do business. I think about Baltimore Center Stage that has eliminated 10 out of 12s and is trying to change their work structure, which will help people with families. Which is obviously also more friendly to women. And I think that, we talk a lot about racism. I also think that there is such a very thin veneer of misogyny that goes through all of our workplaces, all of our creative spaces. It really distresses me, and I wish that we would talk about that more. But I think these issues are being addressed by some places. Will it change the theater overall? Is everybody going to emerge in these suddenly equity-driven houses? No, that's just not going to be. And my other big concern is that, honestly, with the pandemic, when you have theaters that are not running at full capacity, is it just going to be one-person show after one-person show after one-person show? And how many one-person shows are there about, a person, a non-white man, quite honestly, that you feel like people will, buy a ticket to. So, that's where I feel like the economics and then the social, there has been an upheaval. And I also want to say, I don't think it's just about BIPOC audiences. I've been watching shows with all white people for my entire life, and I have been able to relate. So I don't know why people of other anyone who's not Asian couldn't just go watch an Asian show and be like, interesting, or learn something, or think, oh yeah, my family's like that too. I mean, that's why we do theater. And I hope that will go both ways a little bit more, because I'll tell you, when I went to see Hamilton, it was not all BIPOC people in the audience. But that's just to say that I think that a lot more work can be done, and I have hope. But I also have skepticism.
Well, realistic as always, Nandita. So, our mission at Live and in Color is to connect diverse communities, to create new stage works. What does having an inclusive working environment mean to you? We ask this question to all our guests, and I'm always interested to know what it means to you. Does anyone want to jump in?
There's so much to talk about this. There's so many layers to this, but the first thing that I have been really wanting to see more of are BIPOC producers and creative teams. That to me is where it starts, because I think we were starting, Angel was starting to hit on this earlier. If you just hire, BIPOC performers, I'm stumbling over the word because I don't want to say puppets. we're not, I think if we want to be,
we're the least empowered people in the room.
Yes.
The actors are.
Yeah. We're here to kind of realize, we get the FaceTime, but we're there to realize the creative ideas of other people. So to me, it's really about getting BIPOC directors, producers, writers, designers.
Yeah. So true. Anyone else?
I also just want to acknowledge that we're not talking about gender or sexuality on this Zoom, but in terms of the different sexual expressions and gender expressions, that is also, along with what Diane said, to be mindful of that on all the levels, to be mindful of people of different abilities on all levels. This is, AAPAC used to include, we've been trying to include that, and then we were just like, we don't have the scope to actually do gender and ability for everybody, and we should really focus on race. But that's how I would just say that all of those factors would want to be thought of when you're thinking about, all the levels, producing, the crew, the designers, the performers, just everything.
To me, an inclusive workspace is one that is safe for everyone. And I do mean that around gender, ability, race, whatever, that you feel. And it doesn't mean that you're not challenged. I don't think that it's a space where everybody's, told they're wonderful and go home with cookies. I think it's about, although I would like to go home with cookies more often. But I think that an inclusive space really allows everyone to voice an opinion, and it might not be a popular opinion, but they are allowed to have their opinion. They're allowed to say something. Actors can say, oh, I don't know about this line or whatever. Designers can disagree with directors, people, and not that everything also has to be a disagreement or a binary, but that there is a sense of collaboration and that we are all here to work together, and that all of our opinions and thoughts and experiences come together and are equally valued. That's to me an inclusive space. And I have been in some, and I hope to be in more.
Albert, you want to add anything to that? We're getting down to the wire, and I just want to hear from you.
Oh, appreciate you. I'm trying to think of something that hasn't been said. I agree with all three of you. I was just going to really use the word safe, something that feels safe. Yes, but I think you three ladies said it so eloquently, so thank you.
Yeah, that's usually the common denominator I hear over all these episodes is safe. We just want to feel safe. We are so running out of time. We could talk all night, I know. Let's quickly take a couple questions from our audience. And Emma says, how can white theater makers be better allies for their AAPI colleagues?
Go to AAPI shows.
Yeah.
And buy a full price ticket.
But also, if you're a theater maker, I suppose it depends on the kind of theater maker you are. If you're a producer, go check out that work and then engage in conversation. And if you are interested in producing or directing a work, look for directors who are Asian, some kind of Asian. And if you cannot find the director or the producer that you want, and you've got, let's say you have an Asian writer and you want to produce it, get as many Asian people consulting in the room and listen to them. I have been in rooms where there are Asian consultants and the white people are like, that's interesting. And then they kind of just sort of want to do their thing. And it's like, no. If you have us in the room and we tell you something, listen to us and take our advice. There's that also. If you're programming stuff at a theater, make it a point to program people, and not just people think, they responded. I think the knee-jerk response to the statistics was stuff like The King and I and Miss Saigon and other things that take place where we still are playing foreigners. There are so many works being written that just depict us as Americans. Choose one of those. Not all of the stories have to do with us going back to the homeland and having accents. Okay, there's so many other stories.
Let's take another question. Nicole says, do you have any recommendations for AAPI creators we should be following? Oh, well, all of these people, I will say, first of all, but, there are millions, I think I'll let you all answer.
Follow the folks at Theater Moo. Follow. If you're not following NatCo, Theater Moo, East West Players, that's what you need to at least be doing.
My Writers Lab.
Pan-Asian.
I'll just say Live and in Color.
Live and in
Color.
I'm assuming you're all here. You're already
They better
here.
be following this.
Yeah.
Let's take one more question. Bianca says, what recommendations do you have for young artists going through rejection within the industry? Oh.
Hi, Bianca.
Keep going.
Just foster other hobbies and realize that this is just a part of your life. And because if you become bigger than this and the rejection, that's what needs to be in place.
And find
I
the
would
people you
say-
like making stuff with. Sorry, Albert, go.
No. Well, I was going to say, do not compare yourself to other people. Because, and also with rejection, for example, if you don't get a gig because of someone that on paper is your type, support that art anyway, support that person anyway. Because, for example, I went through this recently where someone else played something that I played, and I still feel represented because that's still about, this was an Asian show. I still felt represented because I supported that piece, and I still felt seen because that person looks like me. But I would say, do not compare yourself to other people, and support AAPI Arts, even if you are not in it.
Everything that Diane,
Go ahead, Angel. Go.
I was just going to say everything Diane, Albert, and Nandita said, plus understand your expectations should be that this is part of it. You're not going to book 90% of what you go out for. You're just not. Just numbers wise, that's just how it works. And the key to having a career as an actor is to just stick with it. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Go, Deb.
That's true. One last question. Let's take. Iman says, how do you get involved with these organizations? Well, I'll say just go to everyone's website, which we've listed below. There's Racism is a Virus. I think there'll be AAPAC. There'll be Live and in Color, which you'll find out later. But do you have any specifics with your particular organizations to get involved, or where you need help, how people can help out besides give lots of money?
That question came in when we were talking about all the other Asian theaters too. So I don't know if that person was asking about MyYi, Pan Asian Rep Natco, Live and in Color. If you're asking about those, but definitely go to their websites first to check them out. See if you know anybody that has been involved with them. But it also depends on what you are. It's hard to answer that question without knowing, are you an actor, a writer, a director,
Yeah.
So they might
Get on
have
everybody's mailing list.
Yep. If you're a writer, they might have Writer Lab submission opportunities. Deb, you would know more for directors what that involves. I don't know, but
yeah, it's different for every organization, but pretty much it's be a detective and follow them and go to their websites, and there are so many. I mean, as we keep saying, like I think many people have just not been discovered yet by the masses. But I have faith that we soon will be. We are completely out of time. Thank you all. Before we go, please consider supporting our organization by going to liveincolor.org to donate. All money raised goes towards our amazing artists and developing their new work. Please like and subscribe to see more episodes like this. Next week, join us for the second episode in our special month celebrating Asian artists and activists who are changing the future of theater and the world. Next week, we'll be talking to 4 writers who are creating bold new stories. Richard Rogers Award-winning composer, lyricist, librettist Timothy Huang, composer, lyricist, and Richard Rogers Award finalist Titaya Sinotok and Isabella Dawes, and composer, lyricist Yan Lee, who arranged our beautiful song tonight. You won't want to miss it. Thank you to everyone who tuned in today. Thank you all for joining me. I continue to be in complete admiration of you all and your work, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Diane, would you lead us in a little toast as we leave?
To all of us, to all the community, may we move forward in peace and health and visibility.
Here,
and
here.
Visibility.
Visibility. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week.
It's time to change the story. Come on and change the tune. See how the future looks bright. Change